Okay, about a year or two before COVID hit, uh, Chris Schroeder suggested I start recording our Sunday night workshops that we were conducting in Seymour, Connecticut, that sometimes had 3 to 5 attendees a week. But he believed in it and suggested we record it. And he said, "You give it to me and I'll take it from here." And the next thing I knew, it was being picked up on YouTube. It was being picked up on AAspeaker.com. And when COVID hit, I got an email from one of the first people who started listening to our workshops on YouTube and said, "Hey, why don't we put this thing on Zoom?" I had no idea what Zoom was, so I had to find out. And the next thing I knew, David suggested bore fruit. David became our co-host for the first year or two of the meeting. David is truly one of the first three members of the Big Book Comes Alive. So I give you our longtime friend and partner, David Kay.
Well, how are you, bud? That's wonderful. Thank you very much. Kathy, good to see you. Good to see you all. Nice. Thanks for asking me, Howard. So I'm doing 84 too, isn't that right, Howard? Yeah. So I've said my name is David. I'm alcoholic. I like to just start with that, I guess. It's good to know I'm alcoholic. I like to just say that off the bat. If I didn't know I was alcoholic, I'm possibly sure I'd be drinking alcohol, wondering why I keep getting drunk. Because I was always kind of getting drunk, figuring out why the hell do I keep getting drunk? Because I didn't go out to get drunk. I only went out for a good couple of drinks. And so it was wonderful to see the truth where alcohol is concerned, is what I want to get off first. You know, that's the first thing I had to do. I had to see the truth where alcohol is concerned. And I can see the truth where alcohol is concerned today. So consequently, when I did that, I done step two. And I just want to lead into this where we're at today. So I done step two, and I came to believe in AA at the time. I was in a treatment facility. This was back in 1994. I hadn't really heard much of AA other than my mother telling me about I should do something about my drinking. You're going to turn out like a father for years. I knew nothing about. She used to leave little pamphlets around for me to read. I wasn't going to read that stuff. I want one of them. So I had a prejudiced view of who an alcoholic was, and it wasn't definitely me. It was kind of like some drunk, some bum. Now I behaved like a drunk when I was drinking, but I'm not a drunk. I'm alcoholic. I drank not to be drunk. I drank for the effect produced by alcohol. I loved the effect produced by alcohol, and I wanted to control and enjoy that effect produced by alcohol. If I had my way, that's what I'm saying. If I didn't believe I was alcoholic, I'd be still drinking alcohol, trying to control and enjoy the effect produced by it. Because it was good stuff. The first 2 to 3 drinks are wonderful. So then I made a decision to turn my will and my life over. And we know all this, but I just wanted to spend a bit of time on it. So I made a decision, and my sponsor said to me at the time, he said, "David, what's step 3?" And I said, "You will make a decision to turn your will and life over." He said, "Okay, so what's that about?" He said. So I said, "Yeah, I do. I just turn my will and my life over." And he said, "No." He said, "You make a decision to turn your will and your life over to the care of God." And I said, "Well, what are you talking about?" And he said, "A decision is only a decision. It requires action. And you're turning your will and your life over to the care of God." And I kind of got that then. So he brought me through step by step, because in a simple program, as we all know, I'm sure at this stage, in a simple program, complexities are broken down into their basic components. We call them component steps. So alcoholism is a very complex illness. And I was always trying to tackle the underlying issues when I was sitting at the bar. And here, for the first time, I was doing a step-by-step approach. So I done my inventory, and this is where I'm leading to now. So step 10 is continuing to do that inventory. I've done it for the first time. I recognized the exact nature of my wrongs. So it's not about just saying sorry now. I was able to say I stole, or I was dishonest. I was able to say now I was dishonest. I was inconsiderate. I was able to say now when I was making my amends. Before, I would just say I'm sorry. I didn't understand why I behaved. My behavior was as a result of me being dishonest, or either being selfish or being considerate. And I now had the exact nature of my wrongs. So I know the exact nature of my wrongs today. I didn't know this when I was in alcoholism. I didn't want to be a bad guy. But there's a saying that goes that, an alcoholic and a psychopath, the behavior is very similar. And I just wanted to lead in with that. I mean, because I thought I was one for a while. So the mind of an alcoholic or a psychopath, it resembles that of a psychopath in the sense that they both have similarities in thinking. Here's the thinking. They say defiant, grandiose, unforgiving, which we know is resentment, and a hating of authority. So that's the kind of personality I had when I drank. And when I say this is the personality that I had, and I was driven by it. I was an extreme example of self-will run riot, and I didn't think so. So that's where I was at, and I kind of wasn't drinking anymore, and I had this understanding of myself now. And people were saying stuff like, you got to do your own inventory. It's not about doing the other people. But I did on this, and my sponsor says stuff like, it's a spiritual axiom, David, that every time you're disturbed, no matter what the cause, there's something wrong with you. Now, this is from the 12 by 12, of course. But I said, what? Now, here's the point. I said, what have I joined? I remember thinking, what? Every time I'm wrong, every time someone does something to me, there's something wrong with me. And he said, yeah, it's how you react. And I was getting this. This was all new to me at the time. Now, by the way, for information purposes, I was 27 years of age. Now I'm now 57 years of age. So that's like I'm coming up to 31 years of doing this. So, my understanding has consistently grown, and it's grown a lot since I met Howard Eber. It's grown, a lot when I met him. As he said to you, I contacted him because a sponsee of mine at the time in about 2015 introduced me to Howard. I was a real big Joe and Charlie fanatic. I listened to Joe and Charlie quite a lot, and I contacted Howard. And I thanked him, and he said I used to listen to him on cassettes and stuff like that, or on the internet at the time. And then we got to listen to him on YouTube, and and then as he said, that came along then, and I was able to spend time with him virtually in this format and I learned so much from him, and I don't mind saying that. I think we all would just acknowledge that Howard is a great guy, a great member of Alcoholics Anonymous, and he's full of knowledge and humble as well. I would say, you're a humble guy. So I've always kind of called him, and I mentioned this. Rob will back me up here. I mentioned him at our meeting on Growing and Understanding group. I mentioned Howard Eber as the modern version of Joe and Charlie. I think he's out of taking that into another. He took Joe and Charlie, he modernized Joe and Charlie, and I kind of have developed so much and grown and understanding so much as a result. So here we are. We're in this position where I have an understanding, and of course, Howard, I can use my screen share, can't I? If I just want a couple of things I want to
absolutely.
just put up.
Co-host, go right ahead.
Yeah, I just want to keep you with me for a second. So I'm going to just bring you into a couple of readings, but I won't go to that reading first. I just want to go to here for when you see where I'm going. Rob knows where I'm going with this. So I always try to focus on this now. This is where I'm at. The time is always now. Okay, the time is always now. That's the main important thing what I try and focus on. I'm always trying to be present and trying to be in the moment. Now, of course, I'm not consciously always in the moment, but I'm trying to be. And at the moment, I feel I am because my heart is beating a bit fast. I'm talking. So here we go. So you're under no obligation, and I say this to myself, I'm under no obligation to be the same person I was 5 minutes ago. Okay? And this is good. So I'm trying to grow an understanding with new information all the time. So this is where I want to take you to now. So I'm going to just take that off for 1 second. Here we go. So I'm going to read from the text now, 84, paragraph 2, which says, this thought, so the thought they're talking about, I believe, is they will always materialize if we work for them. So the step 9 promises will materialize if I work for them. So to come into fruition, so will manifest themselves if I work for them. So the spiritual life, as we know, is going to talk about in a minute, is not a theory. I have to live it. So he's leading me into that. Wilson is leading me into that now. And just on that, and we all know this, don't we, that Bill Wilson regularly packaged his own experiences to sound as if they reflected the consensus of the whole group. Now, I got that information from, of course, writing the big book, The Creation of AA, written by Bill Shaberg. I know you're aware of that book. So, and another book we've been looking at in our meeting is Cody Peterson's book, The Shadow of a Figure of Light. And he looks at the alcoholic as the archetype of the alcoholic. And he calls what Wilson done through the basic text, he calls it Wilson's central character in the big book. He calls it as a metaphor of our unfulfilled longing for the union with God. And I believe, and I'm not saying this is, you have to buy into it, but I'm just saying this is what I buy into. I kind of trying to understand what Wilson, he got me to see, and I'm so grateful for this. He got me to see that alcohol is not my solution. No one else could, people were telling me for years, I couldn't see the truth where alcohol was concerned. And here I was, he got through to me. He got me to see the truth where alcohol is concerned. So he's telling the story, and I'm identifying with this man as an alcoholic. And here, I'm at doing my inventory. As I said, I've looked at the exact nature of my wrongs. I've made my restitution. I've made my list of people, and we know what to do with the list. You put the people you're ready to make amends with at the top of the list, the ones you're struggling with in the middle, and the ones you're thinking, I'm never making amends to so and so. You're putting them on the bottom of the list. I put them on the bottom of the list. So I'm getting to this position where I'm ready to go into develop now into the growing steps, we call them, the maintenance steps and the growing steps. And this is where we're at. Paragraph 84.2. The thought brings us to step 10. Now, he suggests that we continue, and I'm going to read this, if it's okay, in the first person, just for a second, which suggests I continue to take personal inventory and continue to set right any new mistakes as I go along. He said, and he's saying we, so he's talking about generally here, we vigorously commence this way of living as we cleaned up the past. So that he's telling me he's got experience here on this. Well, he's talking for them, but it's him. He said, we have entered the world of the spirit. Now, this is where I'd like to bring our attention to here, that we have entered the world of the spirit. Now, that's a big statement. Now, I don't know about you, but I've been to some meetings where people say stuff like AA is a bridge to normal living. Now, I struggle with that a lot. Now, I wouldn't join AA if it was a bridge to normal living. Trust me. I can do normal things. Don't get me wrong. But a spiritual program is not other than a spiritual way of life. It's a bridge to spiritual living. People say, these things, and that's each group is autonomous. I appreciate that. We've got Lynn S here who knows all about these traditions. So, I've read up. So, I'm well aware that each group is autonomous. So, but sometimes I find myself in meetings and I hear things like, "Oh, yeah, it's a bridge to normal living," and good luck to them, and that works for them. But when I was new, I struggled with that, and this is why Howard Eber and people like Joe and Charlie, and I got access to these people, and before this world we're in today, where we can just go on to a meeting online. But back then, it was a case of getting cassette tapes and all that kind of stuff and getting access. So I was limited to where I could get access to it because I love the literature. Wilson's, it just leaps off the page to me. I know they have the new plain language of the big book. And here's a bit of information. They didn't put this sentence into the plain language big book. We have entered the world of the spirit. They did not put this sentence in the book. I kid you not. We did look at this, so it's not in. So I like to think. Now I'm going to put up on the screen for you what I subscribe to, and you don't have to subscribe to, but what I subscribe to. So to understand what the world of the spirit is, this is from Emmett Fox's book, 7 Main Aspects of God, and we're looking at number 6. I'm not going to read it all. I just want to read 2 sections to it for you, so I can help you see where I'm coming from. So the 6th main aspect of God, he said, is spirit. God is spirit. And he's taken that from John 4:24. He said, we know that God is spirit, but what does that mean? Well, that's a bloody good question, Mr. Fox. Well, he said, spirit is that which cannot be destroyed or damaged or hurt or degraded or soiled in any way. Spirit cannot deteriorate. It cannot grow old or tired. It cannot know sin or condemnation or resentment or disappointment. So basically, he's saying, here's the next sentence. He said, it is the opposite of matter. He said, matter, M-A-T-T-E-R, is always deteriorating. He said, while you sit reading this page, the book is actually wearing out. The clothes on your back are wearing out. The building in which you are sitting is wearing out. And your body itself is wearing out. And someday all these things will be dust. True. It will take a long time, according to our ideas, for these things to happen. But happen they will. There was a time, he thought about great cities, they're all gone as well. So we're coming to the next section. So he goes on to say this, and this is where I want to kind of get to here. The chapter, no, go on to the next page. So here we go. He says, this top of this page, I want to go to this one here. So matter wears out, he said, but spirit does not. Now, I hope matter wears out, but spirit does not. So I meant to 13 minutes already. Matter wears out, but spirit does not, because spirit is substance. Now, this is what I believe. Spirit is substance. Herbert Spencer defines substance as that which is not subject to discord or decay. Webster's dictionary says that which underlies all outward manifestation, real unchanging essence of nature. That in which qualities inhere, that which constitutes anything what it is. All this can only apply to spiritual things. Now, here's the end of this section. He said, you are spirit. Your body is spiritual. But you, Dina, you, you, you are spirit, but your body is spiritual. But you are spirit. Spirit cannot die and was never born. Your true self was never born and will never die. You are eternal, divine, unchanging spirit in your true nature. The whole universe is a spiritual creation, but we see it in a limited way. Okay, so that's what I just wanted to get that across. So I subscribe to that. It's substance without form. It's something substantial. It's not the social self. So I've entered into this place what Bill Wilson called the great reality deep down within. He calls it the fourth dimension of existence. He calls it whatever you wish to call it. I'm at it tapping into something other than David, social David, the personality. So what I'm going to get, what I'm getting now since I've done the steps, has embarked on my journey, was I've died, I've been resurrected. I'm going to use this language. I like it. I'm comfortable with it. I'm not belonging to any denominational, institutionalized church, but I'm just using the language because I think it explains what happened to me. The old David, the old personality I came in with, and it died. And I started, like, if you want, more or less like a clean slate, starting all out again. And I was sponsored into Sarah. I was sponsored into the program. So I was developing new habits, new attitudes, going through the steps, a step at a time, turning my will and my life over constantly, sincerely trying to grow in understanding and trying to practice these spiritual principles. But all the while, not going to alcohol now. The sufficient substitute I have is going to the spirit, which is within me. In the last analysis, it's only there that it may be found. We all know it's coming from chapter 4, right? This is why I stopped looking for God when I got into AA, because they said to me, it's deep down in every man, woman, and child is the fundamental idea of God. So in mainstream society, I was looking outside all the time for God. It was going to be when I was 16 or when I was 18 or 21. And then I get to AA at 27 and they say, well, no, you have it already. You have the spirit. So the personality is not who I am. I have a new personality, but the spirit is who I've always been and always will be. That's never changed. So what the spiritual illness is, the personality wasn't in alignment with the spirit. That's the sickness. I never recognized there was something deep. So when I was, and let's use my mother's slender purse as Bill Wilson used it, but I did steal from my mother's purse when I was a kid. And my mind would say, David, that's wrong. Don't do that. And I'd go, I'd put it back tomorrow. And I'd be allow me to take it. And then tomorrow I'd come and I wouldn't put it back, stuff like that. So I always known what was wrong, but I was able to I wasn't in alignment with my principles. Because no one in AA gave me principles when I got here. Howard Ebert didn't come up and say to me, here, David, there's a bag of principles for you. You know, Howard didn't come up to me and said, here, David, there's some principles for you. He showed me how to practice the principles. I already had them. I wasn't practicing them because, well, many reasons why I wasn't, but one of the reasons was because I wanted quick fixes as well. I wasn't waiting to delay gratification. I wanted to be grown up before I was a kid, all that kind of stuff. But consequently, I painted myself into a corner. I couldn't get out of it. You know, all the complexities of all that came up. Now, you don't start with this. This is stuff you just gradually have to do step by step by step. And I've been revealed to me what's going on here. So what I've done is I've been developing that since I got into Alcoholics Anonymous, that whoever I really am is without form, is beyond thought. I've subscribed to that. And so the meditation and contemplation I can really get access to. And I think I'm accessing it as we speak. But that's just my understanding of it. But the very naming of it sounds gobbledygook anyway. So, but there's something other than the personality, because the persona is nothing more than a mask, right? And as we know from chapter 6, when Wilson talks about more than most people, the alcoholic leads a double life. He presents his character, and this is what's going on. And everyone's at it, not just alcoholics. Everyone's presenting themselves as something they are. The chief executive officers, the window cleaner, the roads. Everyone's presenting themselves as a persona, which we're not. We've entered the world of the spirit. Now, I either have entered that, tapped into. Now, I'm going to use the term here that the Christians use as Christ. And we've tapped into the inner, the Christ. Everyone's got the Christ. Jesus wasn't the only one who had the Christ. Everyone has it. The Buddha calls it being awakened to what? Awakened to the true self. This is not new. It's just packaged for me by an alcoholic. Wilson, as we know, is used the perennial philosophy of all time, and he's packaged it wonderfully. And he's able to bring me into this place where I can constantly, and Rob tells me this all the time, grow in understanding. This is the name of our group, you got to grow in understanding. And it is essential that I continue to grow in understanding, because he says, after I enter the world of the spirit, he said, the next function is to grow in understanding and effectiveness. Now, hopefully I'm being effective somewhat with some people tonight. Now, everyone will bite into it, but that's my purpose, is to try and help an alcoholic see the truth where alcohol is concerned. Because it talks about we need a sufficient substitute for alcohol. And this, for me, is sufficient. Because what I'm trying to do is get a better understanding all the time. And it's always now. I'm always trying to improve my conscious contact, which we know is the next step. But let's just keep going with this. So he tells us it's not an overnight matter. Now, when I was reading that for the very first time, I remember thinking, the just for today kind of veneer kind of was going off me at this point. I said, oh, it's forever. Oh, I have to do AA forever. I thought it was going to be only a period of time I was doing AA. Oh, this is not an overnight matter. Because he says the next sentence is, it should continue for your lifetime. What? I thought it was get in, get the information, get the stuff, and get out. I thought, whoa. So you kind of get this place, and then your sponsor says stuff like, well, it is just for today, David. And you go, oh, and you go, oh, the realization goes that just for today is forever. And that's why I started with just for now. It's always now. There's no such thing as yesterday. It's always now. And this is the wonderful thing as well when I'm in the present moment. It's incredible. Because when you have difficulties and then you have problems, and I continue to watch for my reaction to it, as he talks about selfishness, which is, we know, step 4. Dishonesty, as I said, I know the exact nature of my wrongs now. Resentment, and of course fear, and the fear I suffer from, and I more so as I went through my 30s and mostly when I got in my 50s, and people you care about are dying, and the little ego gets worried about all this kind of stuff, and it's self-centered fear. And when I'm struggling with self-centered fear, I identify, because I'm in fit spiritual condition, because I do meetings and I'm involved with service and I have sponsors and I talk to people and get help. I generally have to recognize it as it's happening. I recognize, I'm not connected to God at the moment, as I understand it. And what I'm doing is I'm reliant on self. I'm not beating myself up for it. It just happens. I'm in the world and I have to deal with customers and I have to deal with all this, deal with relationships. And, this happens. I slip out of where I'm at the moment, not happening at the moment, because I'm focused right on God at the moment. So the fear is not going to come near me. Now, this is like me in a pub with 4 drinks in me. This is great stuff. I love being in the spirit. I love being focused on the spirit. It doesn't bother me. It's just me experiencing life now. But when I'm out of this intensity and I'm dealing with other people who are not in tune with the spirit, they don't see the spirit. They're not even experiencing the spirit. It's not my business to go tell them, because they might look at me strangely anyway. But it's not because how do you explain something like that unless they've experienced a death and dying of the personality? If they're just going to meetings and not drinking, how can I communicate? How can I identify with someone who's just not drinking? That's step 1. But step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5. This is what I'm trying to get at. I'm trying to get to this place where I'm at my best when I'm talking to people who are also growing in understanding. Because there's a saying that goes to the effect that, well, I've got 5 minutes. There's a saying that goes to the effect that, does a man grow old because he stops learning? Or does he stop learning and grow old? So, we can apply that to step 10, if you apply that to step 10, do I grow old because I stop continuing to grow and take inventory? No, I take inventory, and I sometimes mark my own homework, and of course I do. I mark and I give myself, the best marks you can give. I'm aware of that. But I'm just saying, I get my moments when, more than not, it's a lot of misunderstanding. And one of my biggest problems when I was drinking was I always felt misunderstood. Now, I don't know about you, but some of you might identify with the classification of alcoholics when he talks about that in the doctor's opinion. And he also talks about the one who's least understood. Well, I think, you know, that was my worst part when that people don't understand me. And I never really had a fellowship back then. So I was always reliant on self. And that's where the self-centered fear would always come from. And I didn't have the connection with the spirit. So it was just me and my personality. It was just my personality thinking. And here's the thing, it was just thinking it was separate. It was never separate, but I was only separate in thought. And thinking is just thinking. It's not necessarily a truism. I was living a life not recognizing the spirit was behind me until I made step 3 and turned round and went, God is, you know, the footprints in the sand comes to mind as I'm talking here. You know, the first time you recognize the footprints in the sand, you go, God was always with me. Because where else could God be? It's my understanding of God I'm talking about here. So God was always with me. When I recognized this is jubilation. I went through a zealot phase. I went through an evangelical phase in AA. I'm telling you, I was on fire with this stuff. This is me moderated now. I was on fire. I was blown up, and I still feel this way. I feel like a zealot in here. I really do. I'm talking about a big book slayer. I was that big book thumper of thumpers. But I've learned different strategies today. You know, you got to learn different strategies, and there's different ways to go through it. You know, and that, you know, but I'm trying to say the same thing. I'm trying to say the same thing all the time to people. I always say to people, go get the basics right. Get the basics right. You know, the step-by-step approach. Then get into the philosophy, get into the theology, get into what you want. But don't start with the philosophy and the theology. First things first. I've got to see that alcohol is not my solution. I've got to see the truth where alcohol is concerned. And I will bang that home to real alcoholics. But what about the real alcoholic? Now, this is just my experience, and Howard asked me to share my experience, so I'm not saying this has nothing to do with your group here. But the fact is that some meetings I go to, and people are heavy drinkers, full of heavy drinkers, in my opinion. I don't go around diagnosing them, but I listen to them, and I'm thinking, my God, these people, you know, they don't need a step 2. They talk about you don't need steps. I need, I, I have to have step 2. I have to have step 2. And if I have step 2, I have to have step 3 because it's a whole package. You know, I have to have the package. And Wilson, in his mastery, put this package together so well. And I have to be in that circle. I have to be in that because at the end of all my exploration, I have arrived at the beginning constantly, and I know the place for the first time. So it's a constant going out into the journey and coming back and going around and constantly learning all the time and growing and understanding. So when all these defects crop up, I ask God at once to remove them. I do. Now I'm talking about God as I understand him inside myself. I instantly say that. Now that doesn't mean my reaction is going to be the same. I'm going to be all spiritual. Sometimes I'm not. In work, I'm not. But I do have to bite my tongue a lot. Now Rob will tell you that, I think, as well sometimes. I'm picking on Rob because Rob he's in my home group with us, and he's a co-host, and so is Maureen. I love people. So, you know, so then I resolutely turn my thoughts to someone I can help. Now I think I do that. Generally speaking, I think I do that. I think I'm like naturally here's the thing, Howard, what have I got? 2 minutes. I think now here's one for you. I think I've always been a good person. I've always been a considerate person. I've always been a thoughtful person. But when I drank, I became selfish to the core. I had to be. And my dad called me a nasty piece of work. My dad, you know, I became a nasty to get a drink. And I used to have a lot of guilt, thankfully, shame and remorse over that. But they would give me a drink again and I'd say F them all. So I had this real Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde mentality going on. And so I wasn't being able to be this guy I'm trying to be now. Because the thing back then was the spiritual axiom didn't apply to me back then. I was only nice to you if you were nice to me. And that's, he says in step 6, the difference between the men and the boys. I was behaving like a boy even in my 20s. So what AA is asking of me, regardless of how other people treat me, can I still practice these principles? Can I still now do my inventory, turn it over, and try and do the right thing? And you know what? I get it right a lot of the times. But when I'm tired, which we're going to talk about some other time, but when I'm not in fit spiritual condition, that's for another day's talk. But when I'm not in fit spiritual condition, I can see myself operating like a newcomer. I can see myself operating like I'm early days, and I catch myself and I call it the teenager. I call myself a teenager. You know, when I behave like that, I said, "Now you're being like a teenager." Now, no one else might know it, but I know what I can do. And they talk about the violinist. If he doesn't practice for one day, he'll notice. If he doesn't practice for 2 days, people around him will notice. If he doesn't practice for three, his audience will notice. But if I don't do this program for a day, I know. If I don't practice for 2 days, the girl next door is going to know. And if I don't practice and take my inventory on 3 days, the man in the shop, the man in the bus, the man in the tube, everyone's going to know about it because I'll have no patience. I'm not practicing patience. I'm not practicing tolerance. And I have them, remember. I'm just not practicing them. So that's why I need to continue to take personal inventory because I'm very good at taking Andy's inventory. Hello, Andy. Good to see you. I'm very good at taking other people's inventory. I'm really good at taking other people's inventory. I'm a master at it. And that's what I've done for years. I was always trying to regulate everyone else. But just for today, I've ceased fighting, I ceased fighting anything or anyone. I can see the logic in that. I'm not, I don't want to be in conflict with people, places and things. And I don't even struggle with alcohol today. Even when I have a desire. Now I don't say that blasé. I've got 20 seconds. I don't say that blasé. Today I don't. That's what I mean. In the now I don't. Now maybe next week, next month, I don't know what I'll be. But today, when I get a desire for alcohol, it's only a desire. It's not an obsession. I might get a thought of drinking. It's natural. If I was a cocaine guy, I'd be probably thinking of putting powder up my nose. So because I'm alcoholic, I think it's okay. And as long as I think it's okay to have a thought for drinking and it's not an obsession, I'll continue to turn my will and my life over. Thank you, Howard Eva. Thank you. Thank you, Dina.
Better off, hang on.